Nearly 40% of young people ages 18 to 29 have at least one tattoo, according to a Pew Research Center study. The industry itself is estimated to be worth around $3 billion and growing. The prevalence of tattooing in today's society means that in just a matter of hours, you can have a new piece of permanent artwork on your body, created by a professional in a sterile environment. But going back to early modern history, the art of tattooing wasn't so simple. So, where did tattooing truly originate? What other methods of skin marking were dominant, and what did these designs signify?
They can show everything from ornamentation, that's a sign of beauty, to maturity, a sign that somebody's become a full-fledged man or woman, marital status, bravery in battle, signs of religious affiliation or cultural affiliation. There's really not much that they don't show from the societies that we understand historically and in contemporary times.
That's Craig Koslofsky, an author and professor of history at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Koslofsky is an expert in the fields of medieval studies and Germanic languages and literatures. His current research focuses on human skin in the early modern era. Koslofsky breaks down permanent skin marking into three main groups: tattooing, scarification, and branding. He also touches on a fourth category for the daily use of cosmetics to change the appearance of the skin.
These are the three ways historically and culturally that cultures have permanently marked human skin. And then kind of in fourth place there is the use of cosmetics, which is not permanent in the sense that they never come off, but could be permanent in the sense that their use is habitual or constant, so you don't see someone without a particular kind of marking.
Tattooing, which is the process of pushing small amounts of ink underneath the skin to create a permanent design, is first documented amongst pilgrims in Jerusalem as early as the 12th and 13th centuries. While small pockets of the early modern world practiced tattooing and other skin marking methods, many cultures opposed the custom, viewing it as body mutilation.
Japan, China, Korea, hostile to it for Confucian reasons. World of Islam, not real keen on tattooing. And then Greco-Roman, Jewish, Christian culture in the West, also hostile to it. Everywhere else in the world is still quite into it.
During the 16th century, during the height of the Ottoman Empire, Coptic Christians and other Christians within the empire traveled to Jerusalem to make pilgrimage and acquire religious tattoos. Koslofsky says that early European settlers would also get inked while visiting the Holy Region.
We have records of people doing this from France, the Netherlands, several parts of Germany, England, and Scotland. Now, this is an expensive and dangerous trip to take, and the Ottomans allow Christians to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. You just have to pay. You have to pay for guards, translators, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. But when these Europeans get to Jerusalem, they do as the other pilgrims do, and they get these tattoos. And because it's so unusual for them as Western Europeans to get a tattoo of any kind, they generally describe it in their travel journals very thoroughly and very accurately.
So, how did these European settlers describe the tattooing process? Well, let's just say it looked a lot different than the sterile parlors and technology we have today.
Your arm is washed off with wine or spirits of wine. That's actually not bad, right? That's ethanol, ethyl alcohol. And then the tattoo artists have patterns that you choose from, and they're just the same kind of pattern that would be used to print on paper or fabric. So they're a carved, raised wooden stamp. So you would pick out a pattern that you wanted. The most common one was a design called the Jerusalem cross. It's equilateral cross with four little crosses in the four fields of the cross. So it's like a plus sign with four little plus signs all around it. So pilgrims in Jerusalem would get that. They might get the coat of arms of Bethlehem. They might get a picture of Christ on the cross, a picture of the crucifixion, or something like that. So the pilgrim would choose the image they want. The tattoo artist would then cover the stamp the wooden stamp with charcoal, press that on the arm, and create the pattern that was going to be tattooed on.
In Jerusalem at this time, Koslofsky says the placement for these tattoos would always be the inner section of the forearm. After the pattern was stamped onto the skin, the long process to make it permanent began.
The tattoo artist goes to work with 2 steel needles, just pricking in the outlines of the pattern and then squeezing each spot until it bleeds. And then at every so often, they kind of wipe off the area that's been done, rub some more gunpowder or charcoal or some kind of dark pigment into the skin there. This is the way you do tattooing, and then continue on with the next one.
Getting a tattoo today is painful, but back then, it was much worse. The manual method of imprinting the ink below the skin was slower and bloodier, leaving the person feeling every single prick.
And until the invention of the electric tattoo gun, which is, I think, just before the year 1900, that's how tattooing was done. In the pre-industrial world, in the Pacific Islands or in North America or South America, they're looking at sharpened fish bone, animal bone, or thorns or other plant products. That's what's sharp enough. You want to pierce the skin precisely, get some pigment in there, and then hope that it heals up nicely.
In addition to the pain, there was also a higher risk of infection. And in those days, there were no antibiotics.
So all the travelers say, they all say, you will get a fever after you have this done. So they're basically saying, you can count on an infection after you have this done. And they already feel that a fever is very dangerous because they're in a much hotter climate. They're in Jerusalem. So they say, you're going to get a fever, but if you just take it easier for a few days after you get this tattoo done, the fever will pass, and then you'll have this remarkable design on your arm.
Along with tattooing, there are also records of scarification, which was most commonly practiced in Africa to symbolize a certain ritual, status, or cultural belonging, among other reasons. Scarification is done by cutting the skin in a way that purposely creates a raised scar in the shape of the desired design. Koslofsky says that while scarification was typically a voluntary cultural practice, branding, on the other hand, was often a cruel and involuntary act of skin marking.
The third form of permanent skin marking is branding. And the 2 kinds of it that we experience in the period I study, starting in 1450, is branding of convicted criminals. This happens all over Europe, including England, Ireland, Scotland. People are branded sometimes on the cheek, sometimes on the forehead, but more often on the hand or on the shoulder, sometimes with a letter showing their crime. So, T for thief or M for murderer.
While branding signified a certain type of prisoner, it also was used to identify slaves during the Atlantic slave trade.
Without branding, it's hard to imagine the Atlantic slave trade. So the Europeans take a practice that they only do on criminals in Europe, and they apply it to signify their ownership of enslaved Africans. And when you read the descriptions of enslaved people, sometimes they've run away. They've freed themselves from a master. Masters put ads in newspapers describing the bodies of their runaway, quote-unquote, property in an attempt to bring them back. They describe people with 2, 3, 4 different brands. One brand that they got on the African coast when they were sold from an African slave trader to a European slave ship captain or slave company merchant. They might get another brand showing that a tax has been paid on their body when they show up in the New World. And they might get a third brand from the master who buys them in Jamaica, in Barbados, in Charleston, in Richmond.
The systematic hot iron branding of slaves in the Atlantic slave trade ran rampant and was excruciatingly painful.
They're branded in ways that are, of course, extraordinarily painful. The slave trading companies know how to do this in such a way that they are not going to cause an infection. It's far more painful than scarification or tattooing.
Skin markings throughout time allow us to remember important segments of history, the good and the bad, that must not be forgotten. To view images of tattoos from the early modern world or find out more about this topic and our guest Craig Koslofsky, visit viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram and Twitter @Viewpoints Radio, and subscribe and listen to our show anytime wherever you listen to podcasts. This segment is written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price.
"2019 was a year of important discoveries about Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Making news this year, researchers learned that Alzheimer's risk genes are different in men and women. This could help explain why 2/3 of people living with Alzheimer's are women. Other studies in 2019 found that vision and hearing loss may increase dementia risk, especially when both sensory impairments are present. There are also new discoveries about lifestyle, according to Dr. Keith Fargo, Director of Scientific Programs and Outreach at the Alzheimer's Association.
A healthy diet and regular exercise are good for your overall physical health, but researchers have also found that they can reduce your risk for cognitive decline and dementia. These healthy habits, along with things like cognitive stimulation, may even help people who are at high risk due to their genes.
Researchers say a simple blood test to detect Alzheimer's earlier is on the horizon. And 2 recent announcements have increased hope for new Alzheimer's drug treatments. To learn more about Alzheimer's research and how you can participate, visit alz.org.
What are you going to do with your old car? You can try selling it, you could junk it, or you can donate it to Heritage for the Blind. Your car will be towed away for free, and your donation is tax deductible. Just call 1-800-835-1478. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats. It doesn't matter if your vehicle runs or not. It will be towed away for free, and you'll be supporting those that need help. Heritage for the Blind is a nonprofit organization that helps the visually impaired live fuller lives. Call right now to donate your car, and as a special thank you, you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call Heritage for the Blind right now. Call 1-800-835-1478. Donating is easy, and your vehicle is towed away for free. Plus, you'll get a free vacation voucher for donating. Call now, 1-800-835-1478. That's 1-800-835-1478.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up on Viewpoints.
Everything from school lunch programs to technology to where they're going to locate schools, all of that is based on people answering their census and us knowing that you're out there.
Don't forget to fill out your census form this spring. Then,
what addiction involves, actually, is a disease of those systems that control your decision-making. So it's a disease of decision-making.
Why is it that some people can reach sobriety and others can't? I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.